Good evening, folks. I've got D for you. Discussion D deals with something called the widowhood effect. So we're going to discuss that for tonight for D. So please join me in discussion D for tonight. Okay, folks, here we go. Here's a concise summary of the article on the widowhood effect. The widowhood effect refers to the increased risk of death among older adults shortly after losing a spouse, particularly in the first 3 months of grieving. This phenomenon is commonly observed in elderly population, not younger individuals. Chronic stress from grief can impact physical health in significant ways, especially for those who already have underlying medical conditions. The article emphasizes that health vulnerabilities and emotional strain can interact, compounding health risk for surviving spouses. It's a sobering reminder of how deeply grief affects not just the mind but the body. If you'd like, we could explore practical interventions or support systems that help mitigate this effect, especially for older adults. Researchers study the widowhood effect through a mix of longitudinal studies, population-based cohorts analysis, and health registry data. Here's a breakdown of how it typically examined. Okay, large scale demographic studies. Researchers track large groups of married individuals over time to observe what happens after one spouse dies. These studies often rely on consensus records, death registries, or Medicare data to detect mortality patterns among surviving spouses. Time-specific risk modeling. Okay, the first 3 to 6 months after bereavement are often highlighted as the most vulnerable period. Scientists use statistical models to calculate relative risk of mortality during these windows compared to matched non-widow peers. Control for confounding factors to isolate the widowhood effect. Researchers account for vulnerabilities such as age, pre-existing health conditions, social economic status, and prior caregiving roles. This helps distinguish whether increased mortality is due to grief or other overlapping factors. Psychological mechanisms. Some studies examine how grief induced stress affects psychological systems like immune function, heart health, or inflammation markers, offering insight into why widowhood could trigger health deterioration. Okay, cross-culture comparisons. Researchers also look at how cultural norms, social support structures, and gender roles influence the intensity or presence of the widowhood effect across different societies. Okay, if you'd like, I can walk you through some of the landmark studies or more recent findings on this. It's a fascinating intersection of epidemiology or demiology and sociology and mental health. Several landmark studies have shaped our understanding of the widowhood effect, each offering unique insights into how spousal loss impacts mortality. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay. Meta-analysis in PLOS 1. This influential study pooled data from over 2.2 million individuals across 15 cohort studies. It found that the risk of death was 41% higher in the first 6 months after bereavement, especially for men. The effect diminished over time, but remained statistically significant. Okay. Cause-specific mortality study. Using data from over 370,000 elderly couples in the U.S., this study explored how the cause of the spouse's death influenced the surviving partner's mortality, it revealed that bereavement increased the risk of death from nearly all cases, including cardiovascular disease and infections. Okay, here's another one, guys. 2023 Gender and Healthcare Utilization Study. This recent Danish study analyzed over 900,000 individuals and found that men experience greater health deterioration and higher mortality after losing a spouse than women. It also linked bereavement to increased healthcare costs, suggesting a measurable psychological toll. These studies collectively highlighted that the widowhood effect is not just emotional, it's biologically and socially consequential. If you're interested, I can help you explore how these findings might inform interventions or policy changes to support bereaved individuals. The landmark studies on the widowhood effect employed a range of rigorous methodologies to uncover both statistical patterns and underlying mechanisms. Meta-analysis in PLOS 1 method, random effects, meta-analysis, data, 15 perspectives, cohort studies with over 2.2 million participants. Focus calculated relatives risk of mortality. Post-bereavement satisfied by time, sense loss, and gender. Strength controlled for heredity across studies and performed meta regression to explore age and gender differences. case-specific mortality study method, completing risk models and Cox proportionality hazard models, data, nationally representative cohort, elderly U.S. couples. See focus, explored how the cause of the spouse's death influenced the surviving partner's mortality. Strength, controlled for a wide range of confounders and examined both all cases and causes specific mortality. Danish registry study. Method, population-based cohort analysis using national health and mortality registries. Data, over 900,000 individuals. Focus, gender differences in post-bereavement health outcomes and healthcare utilization. Strength, leveraged comprehensive national data to assess both mortality and healthcare costs over time. Each study combined robust statistical modeling with large-scale data sets, allowing researchers to isolate the widowhood effect from other vulnerabilities like age, comorbidities, and social economic status. If you'd like, I can help you compare how these methodologies influence the strength of their conclusions. Great question. While large-scale cohort studies and meta-analysis have been the backbone of widowhood effect research, several initiatives are after several alternative methodologies could deepen our understanding of address limitations in existing approaches. 1. Mixed method designs. Combining quantitative data, mortality rates, biomarkers with quantitative interviews can reveal not just how widowhood affects health, but why. Capturing emotional malice, coping strategies, and cultural context. uh, ec- ecological uh, momentary assessment EMA. This is this real-time data collection method uses mobile devices to track mood, stress, and psychological responses throughout the day. It could uncover short-term fluctuations in grief-related stress and that the traditional surveys miss. National expert experiments national experiments leveraging policies changes, bereavement leave laws, or social support programs are Conte experiments can help uh, interfere causal effects of widowhood on health outcomes by comparing populations before and after implementation. Machine learning on health records. Applying AI electronic health records could identify subtle patterns in post bereavement health trajectories, especially when paired with social demographic detriments of health. Sibling or twin studies comparing widowed individuals to their non-widowed siblings or twins can help control for genetic and early life environmental factors, offering a more refined estimate for or of widowhood impact. Longitudinal biomarker studies tracking tracking inflammatory markers, cortisol levels, or heart rate vulnerabilities over time could influence or could illuminate the biological stress pathways affected by grief. Agent based modeling, stimulating how individuals' behaviors and social networks evolve after spousal loss, could help predict long term outcomes and test hypoth- uh, hypothetical interventions. Um, Silico. If you're thinking about applying any of these to specific populations, say rural caregivers or individuals with pre-existing cognitive decline, I'd be happy to help tailor the approach. Alternative methodologies could significantly reshape both the depth and direction of widowhood effect research. Here's how. Myth, mixed method, mixed methods designs. By integrating quantitative interviews with quantitative data, researchers could uncover subjective experiences like meaning making or cultural grief rituals that influence health outcomes but are invisible in registry data. This could lead to more culturally responsive interventions. Give me 1 second, guys. Ecological momentary assessment, or EMA. EMA captures real-time emotional and psychological fluctuations, revealing short-term stress spikes or coping patterns that traditional surveys miss. This might shift the focus from long-term mortality to daily resilience trajectories. Natural experiments. By studying policy changes, bereavement leave laws could provide stronger causal evidence of mortality rates drop after such policies. It would suggest that structural supports can buffer the widowhood effect, something observational studies can only hint at. Machine learning on health records. AI could detect non-linear patterns or subgroups at highest risk, i.e., widowed individuals with specific comorbidities. This might refine risk stratification and lead to personalized bereavement care. Sibling or twin studies. These control for shared genetics and early life environment help to isolate widowhoods Casual impact if differences persist between widowed and non-widowed twins. It strengthens the argument for targeted interventions. Biomarker tracking, longitudinal studies, cortisol, cryokines, or heart rate variabilities could reveal biological stress pathways, potentially leading to pharmacological or behavioral therapies aimed at mitigating grief's psychological toll. Last page, guys. Simulations could treat how social isolation and financial strain or community support interact over time. This might help policymakers forecast the impact of interventions before implementing them. In short, these methods could shift the narrative from widowhood increases mortality to under what conditions, for whom, and how we can intervene. If you're thinking about applying this to specific populations, say older adults with cognitive decline or caregivers themselves, I'd love to help you sketch out a tailored research framework. Okay, guys, so that is it for tonight. I will see everybody tomorrow for shows. Until then, Gator Wellness, take care, folks. Have a good evening, please.